Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time on Thursday, September 26, coming on with the latest on a very dangerous Hurricane Helene, which is strengthening as it moves northeastward across the eastern Gulf of Mexico, taking aim on the Florida Big Bend region for a landfall that's expected this evening. But Helene is an expansive storm with hazards that are already extending out hundreds of miles away from the center, and those hazards are going to play out in multiple life-threatening forms over the next 12 to 24 hours, and we'll step through those. But here are the basics on Helene right now, located about 255 miles to the southwest of Tampa, 290 miles south of Apalachicola, Florida. Forward speed is picking up, now moving to the north-northeast around 14 miles per hour. That speed is going to continue to increase to over 20 miles per hour by the time Helene makes landfall later this evening. The maximum sustained winds are now up to about 105 miles per hour. We've seen data from both the NOAA and Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft that shows Helene is strengthening, getting better organized, forming an eye wall, and we're expecting steady to rapid intensification to continue before Helene makes landfall later tonight as a Category 3 or possibly even Category 4 hurricane. But the impacts are what's going to be most important. If we look at the radar, we can already see substantial rain bands occurring across portions of Florida. There's tornado warnings in effect in some places in east coast of Florida, Florida Panhandle, and also substantial rainfall already occurring across Georgia, South Carolina, central and western North Carolina, portions of eastern Tennessee. So we're going to see that rainfall hazard continue to increase as we go through the night and into Friday. Let's start first with the storm surge forecast. We have a storm surge warning in effect for much of the west coast of Florida, from Mexico Beach all the way down to Flamingo. The area we're most concerned about is here between Carabel and Suwannee River, where we're expecting to see a storm surge inundation of 15 to 20 feet above ground level. So again, I'm 6 feet tall. That's water 3.5, 4 times as high as I am. And that's up to the top of a second-story building. Again, a really unsurvivable scenario is going to play out here in this portion of the Florida coastline. In addition to that storm surge, you're going to have destructive wave action on top of that can destroy houses, move cars, and that water level is going to rise very quickly with the approach of Helene tonight and could cut off escape routes if you have not evacuated and you're in the storms, anywhere in the storm surge warning area. Please do so. Please follow that advice if you've been given advice to evacuate by your local officials. Even farther south along the Florida west coast, very sensitive to storm surge, expecting 5 to 8 feet of inundation. From Chassahowitzka down to Anclote River, including the Tampa Bay area. That water levels are going to rise as we go through the evening and overnight hours tonight, 10 to 15 feet from Chassahowitzka to Suwannee River, and then even over to Apalachicola and Indian Pass, between 6 and 10 feet of inundation in that region. So again, widespread storm surge inundation going to create very dangerous conditions. Moving on to the wind and the wind forecast, and the wind impacts are substantial. The tropical storm force winds extend out almost 350 miles away from the center of Helene, affecting portions of the Florida Keys, southwest Florida, southeast Florida, and those winds are rapidly moving northward. And again, with Helene expected to intensify and be moving at over 20 to 25 miles per hour as it makes landfall, those hurricane force winds are going to penetrate well inland. Everywhere you see in red here, the Big Bend region of Florida, the northern portions of the Florida Panhandle up to southwest and even west central Georgia are under hurricane warnings. Everybody in that region needs to be prepared for hurricane force winds, the potential for long duration, widespread power outages, structural damage, trees falling on homes, out on cars or people if you're outside. So, and the potential for catastrophic wind damage near where the core of Helene makes landfall along the Florida Big Bend coast. So, and beyond that, you see that the entire state of South Carolina, the remainder of Georgia, much of Florida, portions of western North Carolina and eastern Alabama are under tropical storm warnings, with the potential expectation of seeing sustained tropical storm force winds, substantial wind gusts, maybe even hurricane force wind gusts in the higher topography of the southern Appalachians across portions of western South Carolina, southwestern North Carolina as we go through the nighttime and the early morning hours. Again, forecasting Helene to be a strong tropical storm as it affects the Atlanta metro area overnight tonight and early Friday. Again, expecting widespread significant impacts, could see widespread power outages. And a reminder that most wind fatalities in tropical storms and hurricanes do occur due to tree-related incidents. Let's move on now to the rainfall threat. This is the rainfall forecast associated with Helene. Even though it's going to be moving very quickly, we're expecting, really highlighting 2 areas in particular that we're very concerned about for the potential for catastrophic flash flooding. The area down here near the Florida Panhandle and into southwest Georgia, where the core of Helene is expected to move inland overnight tonight. And then up here into the southern Appalachians from the northeast Atlanta metro area through the northeast Georgia mountains, upstate South Carolina, western North Carolina, as the tropical moisture associated with Helene is pushed up the southeastward facing mountains of the southern Appalachians. We could see widespread rainfall totals of 6 to 12 inches, some isolated areas as high as 18 inches in this region. And that's going to create the potential for very significant flash flooding. Everywhere you see highlighted here in this bright pink is that level 4 out of 4 risk for flash flooding, the potential for catastrophic and life-threatening and flash and urban flooding, potential for mudslides and landslides in the southern Appalachians. So anybody in these areas, make sure you have multiple ways to get hazard information from a NOAA weather radio, from wireless emergency alerts turned on your smartphone, so that if flash flood warnings or emergencies are issued for your area, you can move to higher ground and protect yourself. The tornado threat is also quite substantial with Helene. There are tornado watches for essentially much of the Florida Peninsula, the eastern third of Georgia, and up into southern portions of South Carolina. Again, tornadoes associated with tropical storms and hurricanes can spin up very quickly, and we're very concerned in particular about this region from South Carolina through coastal Georgia and northeast Florida through tonight. One final reminder, given the substantial wind footprint and the impacts that we're going to see from Helene, we're expecting to see widespread power outages, and that can create very dangerous post-storm conditions. So again, especially if you're going to be using a generator, make sure you use it safely, vent it properly. We lose a lot of people after powerful hurricanes like Helene due to carbon monoxide poisoning from improper generator use. And again, it'll just be very dangerous outside. So you're not going to want to be out and about even after the storm. There can be down power lines, down trees. So just practice post-storm safety so you don't become a statistic after the event. So let's wrap up here with the key messages for Helene. We're expecting a catastrophic and deadly storm surge along portions of the Florida Big Bend coast where the inundation could reach as much as 20 feet above ground level with large and destructive waves on top of that. We're expecting potentially catastrophic hurricane force winds near where the center of Helene makes landfall along the Big Bend coast, with that footprint of those tropical storm and hurricane force winds extending well inland across portions of Florida, Georgia, South and North Carolina, eastern Alabama. And we're also expecting, again, tremendous impacts from the heavy rainfall and the flash flooding that are expected to play out in portions, especially across the southern Appalachians through Friday. We could see locally catastrophic flash and urban flooding likely for northwest and northern Florida and the southeast United States through Friday. So please stay tuned to hurricanes.gov. Come back here to the National Hurricane Center for more updates from Helene throughout the day, through the night, and into Friday. You can find more information about your local impacts at your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. So thanks for joining us. We'll be here with you throughout the event. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.